Today I'll be talking about the comparison between the hydraulic systems of the Bombardier CRJ and the Gulfstream G550. To start, just a small overview. The CRJ has three hydraulic systems labeled System 1, 2, and 3. They are all rated at 3,000 psi, and the primary system is System 3, and 1 and 2 have more of a supporting role. By having these three systems, it has triple redundancy, and a lot of the operations of the hydraulic are automated and require little to no input of the pilot. The G550, on the other hand, has a left and a right system and an aux system that is more so for backup. And it also supplies at 3,000 psi. The primary system, which runs a majority of the flight controls, is the left, and it also has triple redundancy with these three systems. And it is also largely automated and can even be used as a backup for electrical generator. So here we can see the CRJ layout. We have the three different reservoirs and the pumps here, which we'll talk about in the next slide. But as you can see, system 3 is connected to a majority of the flight controls, and the triple redundancy comes into play. So for instance, with the elevator or ailerons, let's say. So if we have system 1 go out, we still have left aileron supplied by system 3 and the right aileron supplied by system 3 and 2. Even with two systems out, so say system 1 is out and system 3, the right aileron still works, so you still have half the flight control in that scenario. The G550, on the other hand, has a left reservoir, which you can see here, a right reservoir, which is slightly smaller and powers less control surfaces. As you can see here, the left supplies all these, whereas the right just supplies these ones. And the aux reservoir, which is located inside the left system reservoir, but is separated and doesn't share fluid at all. So to start with the hydraulic pumps, system 1 and 2 are both engine driven and electrically driven, and they operate on normally on auto mode, which you can see the bullet point right here. Auto mode means that when the engines are running, it's going to use those pumps, and if an engine were to fail, it would use the electrical backup. System 3, on the other hand, has two electrical pumps, with 3A right here being the primary and 3B being the standby. It pressurizes the hydraulic systems to 3,000 psi, and the manual mode allows for the direct control of what pump is being used. The G550, on the other hand, has only electrically driven pumps for its three systems. And the left and right are normally always in use, with the aux system being on standby in case of a left hydraulic system failure, which then that's fluid that's separate but still confined within the left hydraulic reservoir, can be used to power a large portion of the left functions. The pumps pressurize the system to 3,000 psi, which for both is right at the industry standard for both the CRJ and the G550. And some additional things, the G550 has something called a hydraulic motor generator, which you can see is right down here labeled HMG. And what that can use is left hydraulic fluid to power a generator, which can supply the system with electricity, and also a power transfer unit, which can use right hydraulic fluid to then source that over to use the to power the hydraulic motor generator. So really there's two ways to power this hydraulic motor generator. So to cool the hydraulic system, the CRJ has two different ways that it can cool. For system 1 and 2, it uses ram air, which is taken in the scoop during flight, and it combines that in the air hydraulic heat exchanger, which is depicted right here. And even though both are cooled in the same heat exchanger, they do not cross paths at all. They're still completely separate. The cooling fan is kicked in while they're on the ground when you're not getting that ram air to cool down both the hydraulic systems. System 3, on the other hand, is separate from any heat producing items on the aircraft, largely the engines. So by routing the hydraulics away from those engines, um, the system doesn't heat up as much and it just relies on convection and radiation of those lines and reservoirs to cool the hydraulics. The G550, on the other hand, has a hydraulic fuel heat exchanger, which you can see located right here. That's the heat exchanger. So the hydraulic fluid is pumped through this heat exchanger, and this is inside the fuel tank. So normally fuel would be sitting here, and it does a dual service for the aircraft. It also cools the hydraulics while also heating the fuel, since the G550 flies at some pretty high altitudes. Both aircraft are equipped with hydraulic accumulators. The CRJ and the G550 use them to dampen fluid shocks and provide instantaneous demands for the aircraft. So there's always some hydraulic pressure ready on tap. It doesn't need any time for those hydraulic pumps to kick in. And also, one part that's different between the two is the CRJ is charged at 3,000 psi, those accumulators, which are depicted right here. Whereas the G550 is only charged to 1,200 psi, meaning that the CRJ might have a little bit snappier controls in large demands right away. Both aircrafts are equipped with shutoff valves, and their main function of shutoff valves is stop overheat. They can also help in cases where there's maybe hydraulic leaks or something along those lines. As you can see here, shutoff valve on the CRJ, it's depicted right here. System 1 and 2 have the shutoff valve, where system 3, because it doesn't come in contact with high heat objects on the plane, it doesn't have a shutoff valve. And in the CRJ, those are operated by switch lights on the overhead panel. Whereas on the G550, you can see them depicted right here in between the pumps and the reservoir. And those shutoff valves will only cut off for the left and right. There's no shutoff valve for the aux pump since it's normally not in operation. The G550 is operated by the fire engine fire handle. So in the case of an engine fire, when you would pull that handle, it also shut off the respective fluid valve for the hydraulic on that side. So both the CRJ and the G550 have ways to deal with system failures. The CRJ has, in the case of a system failure, would put out, or in the case of electrical failure, where it can no longer use those pumps, would put out the ADG. So if both engines and the APU were some reason killed and no longer could supply electrical to the aircraft, the rat here would extend and automatically starts pumping B, pump B on system 3. And this is, it always supplies a pump regardless of the switch position. So no matter what pump that's switched to on the overhead panel, it always pumps 3B, which system 3 allows for the most use of the flight controls out of all the systems. The G550 has the aux pump as the emergency in case the left system were to go out, since the left system supplies hydraulic power to the majority of the controls. And that aux system can supply enough hydraulic pressure to use the majority of the necessary flight controls. And G550, like mentioned earlier, also has a hydraulic motor generator, which uses left fluid to supply the aircraft with electrical power in case of a failure, so it can still uh, power these pumps. And in the case of a left hydraulic failure and an electrical failure, the right hydraulic can then use the power transfer unit to then route its fluid to the hydraulic motor generator, giving a even third source of electricity. And G550 also has standby rudder control valve, which you can see right here, which in the case of hydraulic failure would allow for both rudder and flaps and yaw damper for the system. And while it's on the ground, so that's for when it's in the air, and then when that aircraft is then on the ground, it supplies the brakes and the landing gear as well. So you can see here the bottle, or there's a emergency gear extension pressure bottle, which is just sits at 3,000 psi. And in the case of a hydraulic failure, it has that bottle for standby as well. And then this is a picture of the P2 motor. That's the end.